In the fall of 2015, in my sophomore year of college, I nearly dropped out of my dream school to pursue dog grooming. I'm not kidding. After only watching 2 hours of videos worth of the topic, I decided I was an expert, filled out my withdrawal form, and I was ready to drop it off at the registrar's office the very next morning before my roommate stopped me, and I realized how bad of an idea it was. That same semester, I frequently referred to comedian John Oliver as my son. I actually handed in for a grade a film about an amateur cult leader that worshipped pizza, and I wrote every Boston subway line from start to finish. What can I say? Zoloft made me do weird things. Speaking of the Boston subway line, did I mention that I cry frequently on the Green Line? Now, if you're familiar with the Green Line, and the Boston subway line in general, you will see that the Green Line branches out into 4 branches. Now, before you ask, yes, I have cried on every single one of them. I'm glad we're laughing. Together. With me. At me. All right. You know, I think about emotions a lot. There's just so many to choose from, like anger, sadness, joy, anger, sadness, joy, disgust, anxiety. And yes, I did just name every character from Inside Out, and that's just the way it's gonna be. However, to the naked eye, they seem so simple, but they're not. And they get even messier when you throw mood disorders into the mix. I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder when I was 14, when I was a freshman in this very high school. You know, when I got my diagnosis, I was scared, I was overwhelmed, but also weirdly enough excited. You know, I had a treatment plan, I was finding a therapist, and I was moving my life forward. I was getting my life back on track. But wasn't I supposed to feel sad all the time? The media feeds this idea of what depression is. There's this little black cloud that hangs above my head all the time. We're constantly fed this idea that depression is this all-consuming, malevolent force that swallows you whole, and believe me, some days I feel like that. But other days, most days in fact, it's not. I have an anxiety disorder as well, so this is not easy. Thank you to every therapist that has seen me. We're constantly fed this idea of what we're constantly fed this idea of what depression is. This little black cloud that hangs above my head. The media feeds us this idea of what depression is, that it's this all-consuming, malevolent force that swallows you whole, and believe me, some days I feel like that. But life is not a drug commercial. I cannot ask my doctor about this. Sometimes I feel like I'm drowning, like what I'm feeling now is going to be what I feel forever. But other times I come up for air. I have a good moment during a bad day, or I have a good day in general. Even at my absolute worst, even at absolute rock bottom, when I find myself not sleeping for nights, or I find myself crying in a grocery store at 4 o'clock in the morning, true story. Or when my doctor and I are playing darts to see which medication to try next, and I truly feel like my dignity has left the building. I still crack jokes to anyone that'll listen, including my therapist, especially my therapist. You know, I once had a therapist that would just never laugh at any of my jokes, and Susan, if you are watching this, I'm sorry I ghosted you. I just needed a more receptive audience. It's second nature to me to make life situations, to use humor as my ultimate coping mechanism. But it wasn't until this past summer that somebody introduced me to the idea that humor isn't just my crutch, it's my processing tool. Now, the difference between a coping mechanism and a processing tool is simple. A coping mechanism is something that distracts your brain from what's going on around you, while a processing tool is something that helps you understand and reflect on the world around you. Think of it like the class clown versus a stand-up comedian. A class clown will cause a little bit of mayhem in school in order to distract their brains from schoolwork. A stand-up comedian will present to you a story, peppering in jokes not only to process what's going on around them, but to make it funny. Anxiety disorders are a hell of a drug. That was a joke, we can all laugh. I'm going to teach you all about reframing. But first off, we need to understand how depressed people think. Now, for those of you in the audience that already know about how depressed people think, feel free to zone out. I will have the audience do the wave to alert you to come back. You think I'm kidding. So, depressed people think often in a way that's known as cognitive distortions. Basically, the brain takes a thought, distorts it, and returns it back to you in a way that's probably negative. An example of this could be, my roommate comes home from work and I wave at them, and they don't wave back at me. So my brain's gonna take what happened to me, distort it, and tell me that my roommate hates me. Depression thinks so often in black and white, with absolutely no room for shades of gray. All right, audience, it's your time to shine. We are really going to do the wave. Now we're going to start over here, and on the count of 3, we're going to do the wave. 1, 2, 3, go. Oh, I can't believe that works. Awesome. All right, so now that all the depressed people and the college psych majors are back, we can get started. Now I'm going to introduce you all to a process known as reframing. Reframing can be so much more complicated than it needs to be, and I've gotten about 1,000 handouts about it in therapy, and I've never read any of them, so let me break it down for you. Step 1, identify your automatic negative thought. In my case, my automatic negative thought with Lauren was that they hated me. Now step 2, put that thought on trial. Dun, dun. It took me 2 hours to make that. Now the fun part about this part is that you get to be a lawyer for a few moments, minus all the law school. How do I know that Lauren hates me? I don't. In fact, I have a lot of evidence to the contrary, like the fact that they chose to live with me, and also the fact that they let me take pictures with them and extra long CVS receipts sometimes. Most times, evaluating the evidence invalidates the automatic negative thought in its entirety. Now, step 3. I'm still stuck with this awkward experience of my roommate not waving back at me, and so therefore, I'm going to spin it in a way that's funny and also shamelessly plugs my Twitter. The fact of the matter is that I was able to take a negative thought, I was able to take an awkward experience, eliminate the automatic negative thought, and make it something that not only you guys enjoyed, but I kind of enjoyed too. So, I know what you're thinking. This is an awful lot of work for an automatic negative thought. I bet you're thinking that, hey, maybe it's better just to not question an automatic negative thought when I have it. Just let it be. But, you know, I used to think that too, but if we all took a minute, even just a few seconds to question, really question the automatic negative thoughts that we have about ourselves and invalidate them, I believe it'll change your life. Certainly changed mine. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.